Good evening and welcome to our first SRO Task Force meeting. Today is September 24th, 2020. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for being a member of this task force. This has expressed a lot of interest, as well it should. It's a very heated topic that we need to discuss and to decide what we're doing with in FUSD. So first of all, thank you and congratulations on being chosen by whatever bargaining unit, student group, or board trustees have chosen you to be on this committee or this task force. So first of all, thank you very much. But before we get started any further, we're gonna start with introductions. We're gonna start in the American attendance area. I would like the student to unmute himself, introduce themselves, and then the parent, and then we'll go down the list. So American high school student and parent, if you could introduce yourselves.
Hey, I'm Coven. I'm from the American High area, and I'm here to be the AHS student representative for this meeting.
Great. Is it one student?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi there. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Jasmine Zartman. I am a credentialed educational psychologist. I'm also a parent. I have a child at Warwick currently. And I also do work for the district as a program specialist for special education. And I'm very honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll go with Irvington student and then the Irvington parent.
Hi, my name is Nosheen Ula, and I'll be here as the Irvington student representative.
Hi, I'm Ganesh Balamitran, Irvington parent. I have a teenager who's now just joined 9th grade at Irvington High. It's just starting out into the pandemic. Very, very excited to be here. Really see the responsibility, and I'm glad to have been selected. My first time working on a major task force of this nature, so hope to put in some good effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the Kennedy student and then the Kennedy parent.
Hello, my name is Alina, and I'm a representative of Kennedy student. And then I'm looking forward to working with you guys. Thank you.
Kennedy parent. Ty Lee.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was on mute. My name is Ty Lee. I have a stepson who went through Irvington and Grimmer, and now I have two twin girls who are at Blakeout Elementary School, and I'm very excited to be part of this team and hope to contribute.
Mission student and then the mission parent.
Hi, my name is David Cho. I'm the student representative for Mission San Jose, and I'm very excited to be here and honored to be working with you guys. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Malcolm Hoare. I'm retired. I have two kids that have successfully graduated from Mission, and my youngest is a virtual freshman, just started this year. Happy to be here.
Thank you. The Washington student and the Washington parent.
Hi, my name is Chard Ramesh Kumar, and I am very excited to be here. I'm the Washington High School representative.
Hi, my name is Antonio Berbecarrera. I'm the Washington parent. I have a senior at Washington High and an upcoming kindergartner in a matter of years, hopefully at the Vallejo Mills, but we'll see.
Thank you. Now, if we could go to the community members, if whoever could unmute their mic first, since it's not chosen by attendance area. So community members.
I can go first. My name's Annie. I'm one of the community members and super glad to be here and consider this issue.
Hi guys, my name is Pia Telreja and I graduated from Mission San Jose in 2019 and I'm currently a sophomore at UC Davis and I'm really looking forward to working with everyone.
I can go next. My name is Martha Krieger. I think I'm a community member. And I mean, I am a community member, but I'm pretty sure that's why I was brought onto the task force. I'm super happy to be here. I am a community organizer, and I had 2 kids who are now in their 20s who did go through FUSD schools.
Hi.
Happy to meet you all.
Hi, I'm Samantha Chang. I am an alumni of American High. I graduated 2013. So Greg, you were my principal at the time. Now I'm a teacher in FUSD, so full circle story. I also have a background in sociology and my master's in education, and I look forward to working with you all.
I can go next. My name is Abina Oni, and I attended Mission San Jose. I graduated in 2012, attended Fremont Unified School District all through elementary school through high school. So I'm really excited to kind of give back and work with all of you guys on this.
Hello, I'm Marie Hughes, a community member, and I have 2 kids who went to Fremont schools but are now graduated.
Any other community members? Okay, now we'll go with the bargaining units. So let's start off with the FUTA.
Hi, my name is Jenny Appelgren, and I am a FUTA member and a member of the Equity Human Rights Committee for FUTA, and I am the site rep at Olivera, where I teach 4th grade.
And my name is Glennis Mason. I am a member of FUTA. I am the site rep for the program specialist, also a member of Equity and Human Rights Committee, and a program specialist for special education covering the Irvington attendance area. So glad to be a part of this group and looking forward to some good work.
Okay. SEIU.
I'm Mike Estachio, maintenance department in Fremont Unified. Also have a kid at Irvington High School, and glad to be here.
Can I do it?
You want, John?
You have to unmute yourself.
John, you want to?
Yeah, hi. Am I there?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, hi, I'm John Roberts. I'm the locksmith for Fremont Unified, and I'm the SEIU representative. And I have 2 kids that have gone through Irvington.
CSEA.
Hi, my name is Joyce Ricard. I'm a special ed paraeducator at Glankler Early Learning Center. I represent our classified clerical and paraeducators, and I am the current CSEA president. Oh, and I wanted to jump on the Mission San Jose bandwagon. I am a Mission San Jose graduate.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Wally. I am a CSEA representative. I am a school secretary over at Mattis Elementary, and I am also an alumni of FUSD and graduated from Washington many years ago.
Okay, FSMA.
My name is Sal Herrera, and I'm the principal at Robertson High School in Vista Alternative. I definitely look forward to working with everybody here to have some good conversations around next steps with the SROs.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Brian Weems, Principal at Walters. Look forward to being part of this committee and working with all our community and employees here in Fremont. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Okay, board trustees.
I'm Diane Jones, board trustee. I also am a parent. I have 2 graduates and 1 at Washington who is a senior. And thank you all for participating in this really important committee.
Desiree Campbell, president of the board. I have had 4 students go through FUSD. I currently have 1 grandson who is a kindergartner, and I have a rising kindergarten at some point who will also be attending Fremont Unified School District at some point. I'm not sure where, but But so I'm delighted to be here, and I'm happy to be able to listen in and hear the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone not introduce themselves yet?
There is a student from Robertson High School here.
Would they like to introduce themselves?
Yes. Hi. My name is Nur Fatima Sheikh. I'm the Robertson High School representative, and I really look forward to working with you guys.
Thank you, and I apologize for that. My name is Greg Bailey, and I'm the Director of Student Support Services, also alumni of American High School. I currently have a daughter that's a kinder teacher and a sister that's a kindergarten teacher in the district, and my oldest nephew is going through American High School right now, virtually as an 11th grader. So I understand we all have strong connections to Fremont, and we want to make sure that our students and staff have the best outcome that they possibly could have. So you can see with this big task force, we have a lot of representatives from different areas that affect and have influence over our students. So we're going to go over some brief norms that I think hopefully we can all agree on. And then we're going to start going into the work that has been tasked with this task force. And we'll explain that in a PowerPoint that I'll be sharing my screen here pretty quickly. But just some Zoom norms I want to go over is, please, when you're not speaking, if you could make sure that your mic is muted so we don't have the echoing in the background. And please, to help me out as a facilitator, I'm trying to multitask here by also taking notes. If you could use the raise hand feature, that would help me out quite a bit if we have any questions. That way I get everybody who has a question or wants to make a comment, they could do that. Also, this is a very heated topic, as you're well aware. I want to make sure that we are respectful with each other in this task force when it comes to certain topics that we might disagree on. But it is important that we are active listeners and active participants, and we treat each other with respect. So can we just give a thumbs up if we all agree to those?
Excuse me, may I ask a question? I don't
Yes.
see the raised hand, but nevertheless. So I was hoping as part of the norms, given the size of the committee and then obviously how busy everyone is, with COVID, it would be really great to have materials in advance of the meeting. That way we can adequately prepare for these proceedings. And then you mentioned you're also going to be taking notes at the same time as facilitation. Would you be interested in having someone else volunteer for that role so that that could help, smooth out facilitation? I don't know that I've ever chaired and taken notes for a meeting.
I think I am completely open to that. I don't want this to be my meeting. I think this is a task force meeting. So if somebody would like to volunteer to take notes, I think that'd be very helpful. And I have no problem with that.
I can help take notes if that would be helpful.
Okay. I think you're getting thumbs up.
It also appears that we don't have a raise hand feature in this meeting.
Yeah,
Actually, you do.
We do have raise hand feature underneath the
Is it in chat?
participants.
No, it's under participants.
It's under
Okay.
participants,
Yes.
and it's
So
on the
you have to
left-hand
go, yeah.
side.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been a long
Yeah.
time since I've been
Yeah.
a Zoom participant.
So
Yeah.
It's really been a lot of teaching lately, so thank you.
Yeah, so you have to, you have to go to participants, and once you have your participants at the bottom, you'll see some raise hands.
And,
Greg, can you walk us through some basic Zoom control? Is that okay, just for like a minute?
Yeah, you should have, well, I see things a little bit different because I'm the host, but you should have on the bottom of, if you scroll down to all the participants, that's where you see all the features. On the bottom, you have reactions if you want to give a thumbs up, thumbs down, high five. The mute button, it all depends where it is. Mine's on the left, and then your video is also by the mute button, at least on my screen. I don't know if anybody has any other tricks, but that's the pretty basic functions. I'll be sharing the screen, and that's on my end. But if somebody else in future meetings wants to share something, I just turn over the host to them and then they can share their screen. But hopefully I'll be able to do everything on my end. So all you'll have to do is unmute and then participate and then mute yourself when you're done. Okay. And before we go into the PowerPoint, I want to first apologize. When I sent that email out earlier, I should have BC'd everyone. So please do not share any other email addresses with anybody. I don't want to have people getting emails outside of the public input. Speaking of public input, how we did it the first week is the public and the community happened till yesterday at 6 p.m. to submit the public input. I believe we had about 265 or 264 that sent in public input, and that's what was shared with you. We did not edit those. Those were sent via BART to me, and then I just sent it to this task force. So that is how we are doing the public input for this first meeting at the very least. And there's some discussions, I think, at a higher level than me of how we're going to do that in the future. Okay, so you should have received that. Also, it's been brought to my attention that some members would like that in a spreadsheet format, so it's easy to calculate the numbers. Bart is going to get that to me, so I should be able to get that to you later on tonight or first thing in the morning, because it goes to Bart Payne, our webmaster, and then he sends it to me. So I will send that out once I get. Okay. Any questions about the public input? Marie?
I'm muted.
You're muted.
I did not get the public input
Okay.
or really anything except the meeting invite. And also, I think we should talk some more about norms because I know there's some questions in the chat.
Okay.
And also, my question is, should we use the chat or not?
I think it's difficult to me to monitor the raising the hands, the sharing the screen, and the chat. So just what President Campbell said earlier, I would not like to use the chat feature. That's just my personal opinion. Did you have another question, or was that okay? Ganesh?
Hi. Yes, I did get the public input. It was not very obvious to me if there was a way to track duplicates. In that, do you know, since there wasn't information as to who had submitted it, is there a system for you to know that every input has come in from an individual person? I was just curious about that from the input, since you were tallying, people were talking about tallying.
Yeah, I would have to ask Bart how that comes in. I don't know that end of it. I just get the receiving end of it. But I could ask him for duplicates if there's a way for us to capture those. Okay, Martha?
My question is, since we're not actually elected and we do not represent constituents, and I don't know the process of asking for public input, or if there was a basic question, or did we scientifically look at it? Did we pull out this information? Is there a reason, and I don't really want to read it, is there a reason we're taking into account the public input? Because aren't we supposed to be taking data within here and having discussion and making a sound decision based on what comes out of this meeting, these meetings? Do we have to look at what random people think outside of that who aren't looking at the same information? I mean, maybe I'm missing the point here, but I just didn't understand why. I don't understand why it's part of our discussion.
Okay, I think I could answer it, and then maybe I could have the board trustees also try to help. I think what this task, and we'll go in it once I get the PowerPoint up, is we're going to be making recommendations to the school board on November 12th. That's our tentative date at that November 12th board meeting. We want to make sure when we make decisions that we're hearing from as many members of our community as possible with how are they feeling about the SROs. So I think the public input is important. because we need to get a pulse on what our general public and community is feeling regarding the SROs. Now, what individuals, how they read that is up to the individual lenses and how they read it. It is something that I don't think there's going to be any point in our meetings that we're going to be discussing the public inputs as a group. If we see themes, then that's something that we could decide at the end of the meeting when we pick topics for the next meeting to say, hey, we got a lot of questions about this or comments about this. Let's do some more research on that. And then Trustee Jones or Trustee Campbell, if you could chime in on that.
Yes, I think in non-COVID times, if we were to have a task force or set up a committee like this, it would be open to the public to come and sit in on, and there would be a time for public comment at a meeting. So we're trying to maintain as many of our procedures as we can, even if we have committees that are virtual. So this is the way we can do it in this situation. And I would highly recommend that folks take a look at public comment, because there may be issues that the public raises that some of us haven't thought of. And it allows us to, even if we're not discussing public comment in the group, it may trigger questions that we have ourselves that we should raise here. So I highly recommend that you take a look at it.
So it's not just like public comment in general. These are people, so you've actually asked people to send in questions that they would like the committee to decide on and look at. So how do people know to, I mean, what's the process?
No. That's not how it works, actually.
Okay, I'm gonna be quiet while you tell me.
Oh, okay. So we open up public comment so people are able to say whatever they want to say. We're not guiding the discussion. We're not encouraging them to answer any questions. We're just saying, and that's the way all public comment works. It's, surveys, certainly you do that, right? You would do that, answer this question, so you can gauge what people are thinking. But when you open up for public comment, you don't drive the discussion. You allow them to say whatever it is that they feel that's important to them to say about the subject. So when you look at the public comments, I had a chance to look, it was 10 pages long, but I had a chance to look at some of the public comments, and people are saying, keep SROs, and people are saying, oh, SROs are a waste of time, and oh, we need the safety of our kids is so important. So it's good for you to hear that so that you understand what the community is thinking about the topic. But it's certainly not to encourage them to think a certain way.
I appreciate what you told me. I appreciate that you're telling me that this is a process and this is part of that process, and suck it up, Martha, and read it. I really appreciate you.
Okay, thank you so much.
We'll go we'll go to Priya, then Joyce, and then Calvin, excuse me.
Yeah, so on that note, how do you decide like which comments you're looking at if you have like 250 to read within a day? And also, how are you making sure that the public comment form is like accessible to everyone, or people are aware of it? And also, like, how are you making sure that the same person isn't submitting like 100 comments?
I would have to check with Bart, like I said, about the duplicates. It is accessible right now on our website. I think the board trustees kind of laughed when we said all those public input and comments, because they do that every other week. But it is something that I just want to make sure that whatever we're hearing from the public regarding this, that this task force is getting the information somehow, some way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I guess this is a question for the school board members, because I know that you've been taking these virtual public comments for some time now. How do you reasonably look at the public opinion when you have so many in such a short time?
It depends on, for me, it depends on how much meat there is in the regular board packet and how much material I have to go over for that. So there are times when, quite honestly, you have to skim. I do my very best to read every single one, but we're all human. So I would, suggest that people at least skim. You'll probably notice over the course of this that there will be repeats, and it's not that somebody is necessarily sending in multiple emails, but sometimes someone in the community will create essentially a form letter, and then many people will send essentially the same text, and you'll pick up on that. But it is, I always at least skim everything, and I do my best to read everything that I can. And like I said, we're human, do your best.
I agree with Trustee Jones. You just skim and you pick up themes. So what I do is, as I was reading through them today, I sort of picked up things, and sometimes I do tick marks. So if I'm reading through one and I see that it's 4, I'll do a tick mark, and then I have a sense of, now I got 50 people who support, and then I got 100 people who are not supportive. So when I do the tick marks, then I can sort of add them up, because I'm looking at, like I said, I'm looking at themes. And in this case, when I'm looking at themes, I'm looking at, are people supporting it or are they not? And then I can say, okay, so I got all my little tick marks, and I got a number because I'm dealing with numbers at this point. And then I got themes of why. So now I'm, they don't because of this, and they're supporting it because they believe safety is important, or they're not supporting it because they think funding is the major issue, or, and so now I got funding, I got safety, I got security, I got, so some kinds of themes, and then I got numbers. So that's how I sort of differentiate and process the number. And I do the same thing if we were on ground. Every time somebody comes up to the podium and they talk about a particular issue, I do tick marks, and so now I know how many people have come out to support this issue, how many people have come out to oppose this issue. So then it gives me a way of balancing it.
Thank you so much for explaining that. And I don't want to waste too much of our time, but something I was kind of getting at is that we can't really treat the public comments like a vote and quantify it, because one, like certain people could post multiple times, and two, like not everyone actually knows about it. So it wouldn't really be fair to treat it as like a vote. But it's definitely important to see the common themes, and thank you so much for explaining that.
We'll go to Joyce, Kevin, Samantha, then Sal.
So I want to kind of piggyback on some of these comments about the public comment. If you're going to try to replicate how you might handle this on an in-person basis to give as many of the community members as much access. I'm not a big fan of anonymity, and so I would ask Greg Bailey and whoever is going to do this for you to, moving forward, perhaps the public comment come with an attached email. I'm not looking for their email, but I read the comments today. I did see the same text body of an email over and over again. And so I do want to, I'm okay with parents and community members using a form. I often use it when I write my own senators and things like that. But I would like to see that it's not being generated from the same email address. We received 10 pages of emails, and I want to make sure that I'm getting an authentic tick count, whatever that word is Trustee Campbell used, so that if we're going to read them, we're going to know that they're coming from.
And Joyce, just so you're aware, the public has the right to submit anonymous comments. So they
have the right to admit
people have the right even to go to the podium and not identify themselves. Of course, in person you would see somebody's face, but people have the right to submit public input without identifying themselves. Now, people can also choose to be identified which I didn't see any of that on the comment form. So I think it would be helpful if that was at least allowed for people and shared with us. So if people want to identify themselves, we know about it. If people don't, we can clearly see that. So if you see a bunch of things that are unidentified, that, that might mean something to you, as opposed to somebody who is identifying themselves. But people can submit comments without identifying themselves.
It's legally permissible. It's actually, you're not supposed to ask. It's optional.
Okay, I appreciate that. I didn't know that, because when we go up to speak at a board, it's usually the first thing we do is we identify ourselves. So I'm not a fan of anonymity. Because I saw the column where it said community member or teacher, certificated or classified. And so I'm looking for, since I represent not the community, but my members, I'm looking for that kind of, that's what I want to see classified, So if we can't use comments that are not, if they're not anonymous, then I don't know how much weight I would put into them. Okay. If anonymous comments come about their opinion over and over again, I don't want a mailbox full of anonymous. Okay, so I don't want to go on. So since I can't have what I want, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, Kevin, Samantha, Sal, Trustee Campbell, then Antonio.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bailey, you can lower my hand. I tried to lower my hand, but it wouldn't work. Maybe I didn't do it right. More. No, it wouldn't let me lower my, okay, thank you.
All right, yes, I had another question about public comments. Given that what I'm hearing from a lot of this board is that public comments are really good at making noise and that we can register that noise, I'm wondering how can we publicize like this public comments form? Because I'm looking through the input right now and I'm seeing it absolutely swamped by parents and guardians. And given that the school resource officer problem disproportionately or actually does affect students, I'm wondering if there's a way if we can publicize that to the student body, since I did not see that many student responses.
I will write that down, yeah. Okay, Samantha, then Sal, then Antonio.
Hi, I'll keep this quick. I was just wondering, I was looking at the public comment form and I noticed that there was no specificity towards FUSD or the Fremont community. And so the question is, can anyone comment on this, like regardless of where they are? And then the second thing is, I'm also considering the fact that SROs do, I mean, in FUSD affect a certain group more so than others, and if we can have a language translation of that form so that we can meet the parents that might not necessarily speak English, but are affected by this program. And I want to echo Kevin's, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, statement about how the comments have been largely from parents, and this is a student-focused issue. But thank you.
Sal, then Antonio.
Yeah, I think as we move through this process of figuring out what our recommendation is going to be to the board, we all come with different experiences with interaction with SROs in Fremont Unified. We all bring our own biases into this task force. I think keeping an open mind and looking at whatever data, that we would look at as being valid is important. But at the end of the day, there's, I think we have a good batch of folks here on this task force that have, different experiences throughout life in either interacting with police or interacting with their school resource officer as an employee. My experience may be a little different, but I think that's what's going to make this task force a viable option to really, get to the root cause and make some good recommendations. So I would just ask that we do identify within this group what's valid, look at experiences that we've had in interaction and kind of go from there.
Okay. Antonio?
Hi, thanks. So in speaking about meeting norms, I was wondering, especially given the lengthy discussion we've had, if it would be beneficial for the group to adopt, simple parliamentary procedure or some kind of rules like that, especially dovetailing off of the last point about this body being created to make some kind of recommendation, and a recommendation is going to need votes. I haven't seen anything that we're going to be guiding ourselves by, but either basic Roberts rules or something else would allow us to, for example, close debate, to cap debate, to move on to the next item. I think it's just a necessary thing in order to, have a meeting be run efficiently. So I would recommend that to the group to allow us to more or less govern ourselves. And I think it's rather important given the size of this committee.
Okay. Thank you. Malcolm?
Yeah, I think the public's feedback is important. Clearly, the comments that have been collected so far, and perhaps the methodology is less than perfect, as is often the case. And clearly, it's not practicable to go out and interview one-on-one every Fremont resident, confirm their credentials and their residency, and get perfect data that way. So maybe we need to think about what other data is available that reflects the different views. Some of you may be aware that Surfboard E did conduct a survey earlier in the year. The results of that are available, and I'm wondering whether this this team is planning to consider their findings.
I think it was Antonio who at the very start of this meeting asked about, or somebody asked about, might have been Martha, about next steps. At the end of the meeting, we are going to discuss what possibly should be on the agenda for the next meeting, and then what data would you like me to try to get for that meeting. So that is something that at the very end, we're going to discuss. What do we want for the next meeting? I'm not going to make any promises that I'll be able to get all the data that might be requested, and I'll be very upfront if that's not doable. But it is something at the end of the meeting, we are going to get input of what else does this task force need in order to make a recommendation to the board on November 12th. So that's something we will definitely discuss. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to go to my share screen to do the PowerPoint.
There are some people who still have their hands raised.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No worries. Yeah, namely me.
Okay.
Yeah, following up on what the last speaker said, I think I'd like to move for us to adopt Robert's rules to help us make decisions and be able to move on and conduct an efficient meeting.
What?
I have no objections to that. I think that that would be a great way for us to ensure that we get but we have to make sure we have a quorum. So we have to determine what a quorum is going to look like. A voting member.
Like the second.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I just like the second.
Okay. So yeah. So I'm not a voting member. I wouldn't probably not be a voting member, since I'm going to be making a decision on whatever you guys recommend. So I myself and probably Trustee Jones are just observers here. So I would recuse myself from any vote. But I think that the rest of you would have to be voting members, and then you'd have to ensure that you had a quorum in the absence of myself or Trustee Jones, that you would have a quorum. I don't think that Mr. Bailey could be a voting member, and so because he's in a facilitating role. So I would recommend that that for the most part, and I'm not sure, we probably need to go back and look at this, Mr. Burbeck Herrera, to determine whether or not in the past our FUTA and our bargaining units were voting members as well. I'm not sure. I don't I don't
We
recall.
we are.
You are. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I participated in a lot of task force and committees where I was a voting member. The last being the sex ed committee. So yeah.
Okay.
And I could look at those other committees and to see what the quorum makes up, and then maybe we could share that with the task force to see if everyone would agree to that quorum moving forward.
Okay.
For that, when we do our final recommendation to that board meeting on November 12th.
Yeah, but you need to have a quorum, Mr. Bailey, at each of the two succeeding meetings to be able to make any decisions on if there was something that came up for a vote. If somebody decided to make a vote, you'd have to have that quorum at each of the next two succeeding meetings. So I think in the meantime, perhaps what I'm only just recommending, you could do a quick subcommittee to look at that, and in the interim, so during this from now to our next meeting, they could come back to you and give you, pick 2 or 3, 4 people or whatever to research that for you and come back to you and give that to you, so you will have it ready and available for us at the next meeting. Just a recommendation. Certainly, you're
And I would not be opposed to that. If you are interested in sitting on that subcommittee, if you could send me an email, preferably by the end of tomorrow night, and then I will inform those members so they can start working on it ASAP before our October 8th meeting.
Yes, that would be very wise.
And then I have a couple more hand raised before we get to the PowerPoint. Ty, Sal, and Anne, excuse me.
Hi, just because of the efficiency of a lot of folks have a lot of very good opinions and input in this, I would kind of push back maybe on the chat feature in case there's a subject matter where many folks have a lot of opinions on it and they may not be able to voice, or we may not have enough time, so that if there's enough folks who are voicing those opinions in the chat or something like that, they can be attached to the minutes so that all members can be able to review those and maybe bring them up at a subsequent meeting.
Okay. Sal, then Annie. You're muted, Sal.
Sorry about that. There's another item we need to consider moving forward, because I'm starting to hear about votes and Robert's rules and these kinds of things. I think we have to identify the lens of what we're looking at in terms of what the SROs provide to the community, to the student body, and to the staff. So we have to look at it, we have to have essentially three lenses of approach to this. And those would be my recommendations of how we absorb the information we're going to absorb, process, have discussion, and move forward with a recommendation. But I think those are the three lenses. It's not just students, it's not just staff, and it's not just the community. I think it's all three pieces we need to consider as we move forward.
Okay. We have Annie and then Antonio.
Yeah, one motion is still on the floor, and two, considering the concerns about quorum, since this issue, since so many people are interested in this issue, I'd presume that it would be very rare and unlikely for us not to be able to meet quorum. So I don't actually find that to be a concern. It was very easy to get enough applicants to fill all the seats. In fact, there were many more applicants than seats, showing that there was a lot of interest. And I believe everyone, or damn near almost everyone, showed up, which again tells me I do not think that quorum will be an issue.
Thank you. Antonio?
I'm sorry. I just want to comment to that really, really quickly. I wasn't suggesting that you would not get a quorum. I just want to make sure that we understand who is a voting member and who is not a voting member. Voting members does speaks specifically to quorum. So if you don't have enough voting members, then you don't have a quorum. So I just wanted to make sure that people understood who was a voting member and who was not. That was my request, please, so that we all understood.
Antonio?
Yeah, I was just hoping to answer that. There's 20 members on the committee, so a quorum would be a simple majority, which would be 11. And I think that should help us move forward. I'm really just interested in being able, as a body, to move on to other topics. And I just fear without, parliamentary procedures or some kind of rules or something that we would adopt in norms that we may be unable to. We've now spent 49 minutes on, adopting meeting norms. And I would just love for us to have a vote, even if it fails, so that we can move on.
And I am not a voting member, so I will not be able to.
A point of clarification, was there a motion on the floor? Was it Annie? Did you make a motion? And was it?
Yes, I did.
And what was your motion?
Yes.
Please? Can we?
Yes, I do not think that, or I don't know if it was written down. I do hope it was, but the basic gist of it was moving to adopt Robert's rules.
I see. Was there a second?
Yes, there was.
By?
Antonio.
Okay, then all of the voting members should be prepared to vote. And I think you could do that with the reaction. You could, put a thumbs up, you could. And then Mr. Bailey will be able to hear the, or receive the vote from either the reaction or the raised hands, or however people would like to exercise their vote. I will not be voting on this, as I'm recusing myself as a voting member.
The reactions actually disappear after a few seconds, so it might be better to go to the participants and react there.
Oh yeah, let's do this. Yes. Okay.
One, two, three, 10. I think it passes. Did everyone have an opportunity to vote? Yeah, okay.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Thank you, Mr. Burbeck Herrera, for that. And thank you, Mr. Bailey, for letting me help you facilitate this. I know it's a little difficult, but I agree with one of the other participants about disabling the chat.
Okay, so now if it's okay, I'm going to go share my screen. Okay, hopefully everyone sees that. Just want to give a brief description of the SRO task force. I know we've spoken quite a bit about this, but it is made up. It was approved by the board on August 12th for the following members: 2 CSA, 2 FSMA, 2 FUTA, 2 SEIU, 6 student members, 6 parent members, 5 community members, and 2 board members. Some of our tasks or goals for this task force will be to understand the history and scope of our SRO program within FUSD, review the responsibilities and functions of SROs, assess the alignment of SRO responsibilities or functions to current practice, make a recommendation to the school board based on our conclusions regarding the current state of the SRO program. And once again, that is tentatively scheduled for the November 12th, 2020 board meeting. And I just want to reiterate that this task force only makes recommendations. The board trustees are the ones that will make their final decision. They will receive the recommendation from this task force, but ultimately it's the board trustees' decision on what they will do with the SROs. Brief history about the SROs in Fremont. I'm not going to go in too much detail. And if we could just hold the hands until the end, because it's hard for me to see them when I'm in the shared screen. It was established in 1998. Started off with the DARE program, which was a drug abuse resistance education. We currently have 6 SROs. 1 officer is assigned to each of our 6 high schools. The SROs also respond to the junior high or middle schools and elementary schools when available. They try to do that within the same attendance area if possible, so they can start building relationships with the students and or staff from their feeder schools. All the SROs in Fremont Unified, with the Fremont Police Department must go through a basic SRO course once they get hired. Plus, they could also have continuing education that the SROs go through on a yearly basis. Some of the functions, and these next 2 slides are just some of the functions that the SROs do on our campuses in no particular order. They provide traffic enforcements around campus, awareness of all the campus layout. And what we mean by that is all the SROs have a detailed map of all the schools with classrooms, with closets, and we've even identified our special ed rooms in case something happens that we might go to those rooms first to make sure our special ed students are okay, or how they enter a room might be a trigger for some of our special ed students who might get triggered. There are immediate response in emergency situations on campus. They're on our campuses, so they can respond very quickly. Also to medical emergencies, and not just, some of the emergencies could be in PE. A student fell or broke their arm. It could be an allergic reaction. They could immediately respond and then contact an ambulance or paramedics as needed. It's a dedicated team to respond to school-related incidences. What I mean by that is bomb threats and campus threats. We've had at least 3 this year of anonymous bomb threats through many of our campuses in Fremont, and we had 24-hour direct contact with the SRO to ensure we could open up school the next day. Whether that's on a phone call with the police sergeant or Officer Lervano at 11 o'clock at night or 5 a.m. in the morning to make sure that we had a plan in place before staff and students came to school. They're a resource for us during reunification process. When we unfortunately have to evacuate students, we had to do it at Thornton, I believe, last year at the mall. They assisted us with that by setting up the perimeter and assisting releasing the students to their parents. They're also a security presence for school campus, and they prevent crime on campus. They do welfare checks. Many times our schools will contact them, their SRO, to do welfare checks on students because we feel that that student might be in danger, or they might be in a dangerous situation where they're residing at. And right now, they're the only ones in Fremont that could do a 5150 mental health hold. They are the only ones in the county that could ultimately make that call. Also, they conduct criminal investigations, child abuse or sexual assaults, either the perpetrator or in some cases, the victims. Some of these victims, it occurs outside of Fremont, but they still go to the officer to get support and help. They enforce laws around campus, like I stated earlier. They work in coordination with our Youth and Family Services Department for the diversion program. The main reason for that program is to keep juveniles out of the judicial system, so we put them in a diversion program. They provide security for all sporting events, and mainly football and basketball, dances, in some cases proms and balls, in all of our graduations. They provide security for us. They provide training to staff and the community. Some of the topics may include vaping, run, hide, fight, drug abuse, and gang awareness, to name a few. They are a member of our SRB team. Our SRB team is a school attendance review board. When students have a tough time going to school or getting to school on time, we have a review board with many people at the table, and our SRO or police sergeant are one of them on the review board. When the sergeant is there all day for SRB meetings, he is not in uniform. He is in a suit and tie without his normal uniform on. They also partner with us and the city with alternative to suspension. For our junior high and high school students who are caught vaping, instead of suspension, we might put them in a Y-Try program where they get some counseling with the city of Fremont. And then the police department, they do a parent info night on what could possibly happen to them if they continue to smoke or to vape, the negative effects that it might have on them. And they also facilitate the Summer Youth Academy. They assist with the Police Explorers program. And more important, the most important thing is I think they provide a positive relationship with students. That's one of their goals that they try to do. And I think this is the crux of what the task force must do. After tonight, we have 2 scheduled meetings. We might have to add a third if we think it's possible, if it's needed. But basically what we need to do is break down the functions and assess the following. Should we maintain the SRO program as is? Should we modify the SR program? And if we modify it, how will we modify it? What will it look like? And we want to make sure, if at all possible, all the functions that they did, we would like to make sure that we still continue with those somehow, some way, if possible. And then the third is, should we eliminate the SRO program? What I do want to make a brief comment on, should we eliminate? Law enforcement still might need to be contacted in some situations for criminal activity, if there's a crime on campus, and right now for 5150s. So it might be, we can't completely get rid of law enforcement on campus, but that third option would say we're not going to have an SRO who's on campus on a daily and assigned to a school. So that is our task. I'm going to stop share so we could ask some clarifying questions and then go over next steps for our next meeting. And I know that was very, very quick, but I think it's more importantly to have a rich discussion on how do we think it's going to look like. But before we need to know what it looks like, we need to know what are the current functions that they do. So we want to make sure that the task force is very clear on all the functions that the SROs are currently doing. Not saying that they have to continue doing that, but currently that's what our SROs are doing for Fremont Unified. So if you could please use the raise hand feature now if you have question or comments, and I will do my best to call upon you. If I can move my cursor up. Okay, Antonio, then Jenny, and then Kevin.
Yeah, I have hopefully 2 very brief comments. Number 1, I believe I emailed you approximately a month ago about the 5150 situation. I know you stated that only peace officers can administer 5150 holds under the statute. There's certain individuals designated by the county, mobile crisis teams, as well as qualified clinicians tied to an institution. We have the MET program in Fremont, for example, and we have the CATT team that's going to be starting at the end of the year that can do 5150s. So I would push back on that point. It's not true according to statute. And then the second point is, if we are going to potentially move to modify the SRO program, if we're going to basically do that at the very end of the meetings, there won't have been an ability for then us to determine how we're going to modify it. So I just wonder if we're gonna, like, if that's the final recommendation, where would we slot in any modifications? So it seems like certain work streams need to be happening in parallel, regardless of the determination that's made at the end. Thank you.
Okay, Jenny, then Calvin, and then Joyce.
Antonio actually spoke to the point that I was going to also ask for clarification, because you did state that they're the only people in Fremont that can perform in a 5150, and I did believe that to be untrue also. So thank you, Antonio. I believe that he clarified that for us.
All right. I just had a couple of questions about how we're going to frame this discussion, given what we come up with as what functions are being carried out by the school resource officers. So I'm just wondering, is this discussion going to be like? Does the school resource officer have the burden of proof? Does the current system have the burden of proof insofar as we're going to spend these meetings discussing as to whether the SRO presents benefits? And if they don't present benefits, that means we default to modifications, default to an alternative to school resource officers, or is it rather any anti-SRO advocates' burden to show that the current SRO system is bad? Just to establish a threshold for consensus.
I envision, and I think when you talk about the modifying, it's probably going to be the most difficult one that we tackle, right? Keeping it is pretty simple. It's as is. Eliminates pretty simple. We get rid of the 6 SROs on campus. The modifying one is exactly what you said. And I think what Antonio was saying earlier is, what does that look like? So if we say we don't want officers to provide security at football games and basketball games, okay, that's easy to say, but then are we going to have private security doing it? Are we going to have more campus supervisors doing it? Those are things that we need to discuss. We still need to have supervision there. Who would that, or who that might be? And then we give that to the board to make their ultimate decision on what they would like to do.
Understood. I actually just had one more question about the history of SROs within FUSD. I'm just wondering, how much has the SRO system changed from the conception of DARE? Because personally, in my understanding of DARE, I've understood it to be a program that is not, to say the least, friendly to minority groups. And I'm wondering if there is some legacy from its existence within DARE programs that persists to this day.
I don't believe so. I think DARE has not been on our campuses for quite some time, but I would have to ask Sergeant Rodriguez that question. I'm not completely 100% sure, but I know DARE has not been part of FSU for a while. That's how it was initially started, having that collaboration with the district and the police department. Okay.
My turn?
Yeah.
Okay. So I appreciate the slides, Greg, and you listed a lot of functions that the SRO does. And to be honest, I've heard these words, but I don't actually know what that means, meaning Summer Youth Academy. So that's part of their function, but I'd like to know what that means. So it's a lot of information. There's a lot of functions that you listed. Is there any way we can somehow get a readout of the actual, Summer Academy? That's when 14 and 18-year-olds get invited during the summer to do so I don't know what the Summer Academy is. And so I'm wondering if there's a way to get what those duties are defined as.
I think we could do that 2 ways, Joyce. One, I could get that information from the police department, or that's something that you guys could decide at the end of this meeting, bringing a representative from the police department to answer those questions that you might have at the next meeting.
So this group can decide you know, either way, I'd like that information, however it's delivered. But to make a better, you know, to be able to make a decision, I would want to know what those functions actually are.
Yes, Joyce, I think at the end of the meeting, hopefully we could make sure that we do not forget that question, to make sure we take a vote on that to see how you would like to get that information. Okay, we'll go to Martha, then Glennis, and then Ganache.
Sorry, am I off mute? Oh yeah, I am, damn it. It goes off easily, sorry. I had a couple questions. Which of the functions described on the SRO functions would be done by Fremont Police if the SRO were not, if the SR program wasn't there? Because I felt like a number of those things would be covered anyway by Fremont Police. If there's robberies or crimes, they really have to look at those, right? So if you could just tell us that, that would be great. And then are SRO officers actually police officers?
Yes, they are.
So are they covered by qualified immunity and other legal protections that are afforded all police officers?
They are a full-fledged police officer, so yes.
Do the students have the same civil rights and protections that everyone has?
Yes, in what?
In terms of search and seizure,
yes,
witness,
yes. Actually,
representation. Do they have representatives on campus to watch out for their rights if they are being encountered or spoken to the SRO?
Right now, our school admin, and we have two principals in the room right now, school admin has much more flexibility on search and seizure than our Fremont SROs.
Okay. And then I guess my other question was, what is the intent of the SRO programs? Because I didn't see this in terms of student outcomes. So when we talk about measurable, accessible goals, and I'm kind of a data person, what are the measurable, accessible goals that SROs have as a task? Because teachers have goals, custodians have goals, we all have goals as staff and parents. What are the measurable, accessible goals that are set up for the SRO program? What's its function? What's the focus? And how do we measure that in the end? And how do we follow up with students and parents and families later? Those are my questions.
Okay. Glennis and then Ganache.
Thanks, Greg, for the overview. I think you mentioned some of those things at your presentation at the board meeting a while back in terms of the roles and responsibilities of the SRO. I think echoing some of the other comments, if we can get some data on how much time they spend on each of those things and then what the impact is on that. I don't know if that would come necessarily from just the police, but also from some of the administrators at the secondary level would be great to hear from. I think some other data you mentioned at one of your prior presentations for the board was arrest data. I'd love to see also, since we think sometimes we talk about, and it's a tough subject, the pipeline to prison, I'd love to see some things on suspensions, expulsions, 5150s, and driving to that arrest data. I'd love to see that. And then also maybe we want to look at broader data on how do SROs impact potential like school shooter violence, because I know that's sometimes a concern for schools. And so I think we want to look at broadly across the nation, how has that impacted school shootings in the recent future. The other thing I'd like to mention is that for as long as we've had the SRO program, I'd love to see the data related to that same time frame. So that'd be great.
Okay. Ganache and Maria.
Hi, I had actually 3 questions. A couple of them have been asked before, but I'll re-emphasize them. So the first one was, do we currently have a written policy at FUSD for police interactions with students? Are parents required to be contacted when cops work with kids? Okay, no. Is there a policy for is there a written policy for when staff can request help from SROs, like under what conditions they're allowed to ask for SROs to intervene with students? Because I understand the cops being there to protect the school from outside threats, but as far as interactions with students, I'm pretty sure it should be quite limited. So I'm trying to understand what policies there are for limiting interactions with students. So that was my first question. The second question I had was, as Kevin was saying earlier, since this is no longer related to the original DARE program, do we have like a board discussion or a meeting where the new functions were adopted? Like, so we're no longer going to be driven by DARE, but we're going to be driven by these new functions that the SRO is going to do. Was that evaluated by the board and put down that this is the list of functions? It'd be good to get that information. And the third question I had was, when I looked at your list of items, you said the most important thing that they do is build positive relationships with students. And I'm scratching my head on that because I feel like every FUSD staff member on campus would be building positive relationships with students. So any clarification on that? What might that mean? I hope everybody's building positive relationships at the school.
Yeah, and I'll let the two principals speak on that, but in my many years as an assistant principal and principal, sometimes students go to the custodian to be the mentor, or the paraeducator, or the secretary, or the police officer. So I think it varies from what students are comfortable with and who they might go to start building those positive relationships. I don't know if Mr. Herrera or Mr. Weems, if you would like to add on to that.
Yeah, I think the main thing is the stigma that the uniform has. A lot of our students, of course, throughout this unrest that we have been having, the stigma towards that uniform, especially the 16 years that I have been in as an administrator, it's different when our students actually interact with these officers in a positive way, and they don't just see the uniform and this enforcement that carries with it. They actually have a relationship and they start getting to know them. It's very different. Now, of course, every staff member should be doing a positive interaction with our students, but they don't have the uniform and everything that goes with it. So that's a huge part. I know about 2 years ago, actually, no, this last year, when we just got sixth grade moved to Walters, Fremont PD started doing a program called Building Bridges, and met with our sixth grade students and really started focusing on that, and started understanding that these are community members with a uniform here to help protect you, but we're also here to show that this is a positive relationship, not a negative one, and we're here to help, not the opposite.
Thank you. So it helps remove the stigma. So it helps the police department remove the stigma that is associated with their uniform. So it helps them out. Okay, understood.
And I would like to echo that. You know, as a school principal, you know, you want to make sure that every student, so that means all students, have an adult on campus that they feel comfortable and can connect with. And in my experience, 22 years as an administrator in Fremont, working both at the junior high and the high school level, I've seen dozens of kids yearly that the SRO is their point of contact. Their SRO is their, their comfort. And, you know, seeing that over a number of years is definitely something that has been positive at least the schools I've been at. And just to kind of echo, I think somebody mentioned some questions. I think, you know, bringing Mike Rodriguez, you know, having him join us at our next meeting where he could be real specific on some of the questions that are being asked in this forum, I think would be helpful. But again, I do want to focus, you know, I think our next 3 meetings on, you know, how do they not only impact students, but the community and our staff as well. There are implications that we have to consider, because safety is very important at a school. Things happen at a school, especially at a high school. Kids are very big at the high school. And I think we need to consider not just the students, but the staff and the community, and how the SROs have an influence on those 3 stakeholders.
I think along with that, just a look at the list that Mr. Bailey showed us, and there was a question earlier, you know, why can't Fremont PD serve these different criteria that SROs do, that the list that Mr. Bailey showed us? They can. The problem is the efficiency. There are times where I have had students that are being abused by their parents. I have had to call, and I had to wait at school for 6 hours until, you know, maybe 10 p.m. because I wasn't going to have the student go back home. When it comes to SROs, they are especially for the school, and the efficiency of them coming there and dealing with those type of issues are a lot quicker. So they're there within a half an hour.
And also with that, if right now our SROs, when they're dealing with an issue on campus, they're going solo. If we call law enforcement, there's going to be at least 2 officers. And right now with this extremely tense time, they're going with 3 officers. So if we call an officer that is not an SRO, there's going to be possibly 2 or 3 police on campus, which might create some other issues with our student population. So we'll go to Maria, then Annie, then Ty.
Hi, just a point, my name's Marie.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's just something that bothers me. So I wanted to speak a little bit to what Kevin said. He's like, how are we going to make this decision? I think that we need to be very focused on student outcomes. And based on that, after your presentation, I have many, many questions. Like others, I wonder what the measurable, accessible goals are. I wonder what kind of training the administration has in terms of dealing with law enforcement. Is there an, what do they call that? A memorandum of understanding of when police are called and when they are not? What kind of board policies are there that are around this? Someone else brought up, you know, when are parents brought in? If they're notified when their student is being arrested or interacting with an SRO. And based on all these questions, I feel, and all the questions everyone else has brought up, I don't see how we're going to be able to produce a report with only 2 more meetings. So I would like to propose that we get some subcommittees going to start addressing these. Oh, and one other point, you said if we get rid of SROs, that would be easy. I disagree with that. I think it's just the same as if we keep them, get rid of them, or modify how we use them. We have many, many questions we have to answer about best practices and how we would be interacting with both the SROs and the police department. So.
Okay, Annie, then Ty, then Antonio.
Yeah, I'm just kind of concerned a little bit with the presentation and some of the framing around what SROs do. It seems to me that a lot of the functions listed would in fact be performed either easier, better, or both by personnel that is not a cop. For example, traffic enforcement, it doesn't take a cop to direct traffic. In fact, at my school, when I was going to high school, teachers tended to do a lot of traffic directing. Aware of the campus layout, you said that they would know where the halls and the closets and the classrooms are. I believe almost anyone could look at a map of a school and understand those, where things are. Immediate response in emergency situations, saying if someone is hurt in a PE class, it seems like a medical doctor would be a better first responder than a police officer, as a doctor knows how to deal with medical emergencies and injuries. There are others. For the sake of time, I won't bring up all of my concerns, but the last one, or the last 2 I'll say, are the welfare checks. Again, it seems like someone who is trained in mental health and counseling would do a better job of doing welfare checks than someone who is a cop and who is trained to do other functions, not mental health. And those functions, I know one principal noted that there was an abused student. I'd be concerned as to why a police officer was the first to respond to that situation. I think, again, a counselor would be the best response. to that situation. And then lastly, when we're talking about criminal investigations, criminal behavior, right? The presence or absence, in fact, of SROs doesn't mean that police officers cannot perform functions. It doesn't take an SRO on campus 24/7 to conduct a criminal investigation. Police can do that regardless of whether there are SROs or not. So when we hear about these functions, I think we really need to critically consider which type of personnel would be the best to perform these functions, and whether SROs, again, would be the best to perform these functions, or if these functions can be performed better without SROs, better by police who are not SROs. And so I think we really need to put some critical thinking into this.
Thank you, Ty, and then Antonio, and then Cobbin.
Hi, thanks. I want to be brief, but I want to also try to be efficient because there's so many folks on this call. So the two things I would recommend, because I think a lot of us are data driven and we want to see what the actual impact has been on the students, the community, as the principals have told us and things like that. So what I would ask is two things. Starting the subcommittees that have been on the chat. So one subcommittee, I propose, and we could do a vote or however is more efficient, to say, let's have a subcommittee on if we were to modify this SRO, what would it look like, and what folks would be a part of that. How much would be the police department? Is it, and then we can make a judgment, and this all the folks in this team can say, you know what, there are some benefits of a 30-minute turnaround, but does that actually fit the need by, or can it wait 24 hours if it takes that much, or till 10 p.m. by a police officer, or whatever it may be. So I propose a subcommittee on what to develop on a plan on what it would look like if we were to modify the SRO so that it could be distribute those functions. Maybe not all the functions, I don't know. I'm gonna hold judgment and see what that happens. And then the second thing is, I think because of our data driven and people are asking for, what is the exact scope of an SRO? How is it defined? Where, and then along with that, all the data. Give us this historical data on these campuses of the instances that happened and the demographics behind it. The demographics are, did it involve a medical need? Did it involve, what are the demographics of the students? Racially, gender, or LGBT, or were they special needs? And so based on that collective data, and if we can get as soon as possible, and we'll work with it. And I understand there's HIPAA and all these things, we can anonymize it, we can do whatever is necessary so that that subcommittee can present the data and the whole committee can actually look at it. So two committees, one on what it would look like to modify it, and so it could work in parallel, and report, and then two on the data and the scope. So that it's great that a police officer wants to come talk. It's great, all those things, but we want to be able to move it forward based on data as well. So those are my 2 points. Thank you.
I just want to do a time check. We're at 7:27, just to let everybody know. I think you guys as a group could decide to continue, but that'll be up to the task force.
Well, I think we have a motion on the floor. I would like to amend it. I think that the subcommittee to look at substitutions for the SROs, that's probably too big of a thing to bite. So I would suggest that we have one subcommittee that looks at campus security, one that looks at mental health, and then one that looks at best practices for interactions among these three people: staff, SROs, and students.
I second that amendment.
Same here. On what Mr. Bailey said about adjourning the meeting, I think I had a proposal for some data that might be incorporated. I can ask that question later, but just on whether we should adjourn the meeting, I think I have a pretty good question to ask. So
I was wondering, I didn't hear a second to a motion. You said there was a motion on the floor, but I didn't hear a second to the motion that was on the floor.
Yeah,
So,
I was next to speak, and I was gonna second and ask for a friendly amendment.
Oh, okay.
Desiree, if you wanted me to do that.
Okay.
I don't like bringing up points of order too early into meetings.
Right.
But yeah, so
that was a
is
point of order, though, because someone tried to friendly amend a motion that was not second.
Sorry, I didn't know I had to second it first. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Okay.
And is it, sorry, could I get your name's pronunciation? Tail?
Sure, Tony, it's Ty.
Ty, sorry, Ty.
And just to be clear, I'm okay with the second, but the other motion I not appropriately mentioned was a subcommittee on collecting the data and the scope.
Yeah, that was what I was going. So I was going to second it. Second Ty's motion with the amendment of the 3 points that Marie brought up, and then as well a fourth one, which is Ty's original motion of the data. I believe that's a critical piece for us to make any kind of decision moving forward. And Greg, would you like me to write the motion in the chat so we all have it in front of us?
I'm not a fan of the chat, but I think right now would be appropriate.
Yes, and I agree. And make sure Priya could capture it because I think Priya's taking notes.
Yes, I'm taking notes.
And I think you can save the chat as well.
I believe this accurately captures the motion as I amended it, and assuming Ty accepts that friendly amendment, is that it?
I
Ty?
do. I do.
And then Marie, does that capture what you're trying to add?
Absolutely.
Should we vote?
There was a motion and a second.
Just really quickly, with the list, campus, should that be campus security, mental health, interactions and data, or does campus mean something other than what I'm thinking there?
I did say campus security.
Are you referencing campus supervisors? What are you referencing?
So campus
security is what has now been written.
Yeah, campus security is the things that came out of the public comments. We want the students to be safe. What about school shootings? That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense to people?
Yes.
So,
are we ready to vote?
I was going to say, was there a first and second? Okay, we could call the vote. There was discussion. Use the function in the participants. Motion passes. Would you guys now like to discuss what those subcommittees how they would proceed moving forward?
I think there was the other motion regarding the scope and the data, the demographics and the historical data of the SROs on campus.
Ty, that would be in the data subcommittee.
Oh, sorry. Got it. Thanks.
No problem.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, there's a lot of hands, so never mind, I'll be quiet.
I need to get Patty Sandoval here.
So yes,
is
you do need some help right about now.
Yeah.
I'm willing to help you. I'm willing to help you if you need.
Trustee Jones, Jasmine, then Kevin, and then Samantha.
Yeah, I think it's great to form these these sub-task forces, because I think we're all getting a sense of the scope of what this review of the SRO program is going to entail. I think we also may need to consider how often the whole body is going to meet in order to meet the deadline that the board is hoping to get some input from this committee by. And I want to emphasize that I do think it's important that we try to come to a recommendation by that time frame, because as we're facing some other issues in the district, what comes out of this committee may have some influence on other things. As we have moved into the red tier with COVID, and we are starting conversations about setting criteria for coming back, one of the things that happened when we started this task force was we agreed to suspend paying for SROs while we were in shutdown, but that if we return, as it stands right now, the SROs would return. So when we start talking about potential reopenings, this may come up. And in addition, if people aren't aware, we are facing some serious budgetary issues that have come up at the last board meeting. If you didn't know about that, I urge you to take a look at the agenda from the last meeting and find that presentation and look at it. But we're also going to be facing budget issues. And if there's a strong recommendation to keep the SRO program, that may affect the way trustees look at say a cut list. If there is a strong feeling that we don't need to keep this, then that may affect the way we look at a cut list as well. So what comes out of this committee is going to impact things that are going to be coming to us you know, in the December, January timeframe. So while I don't want to light a fire under anyone, I think staying on task and efficient with these sub-task forces and potentially having this whole body meet more frequently, I think would help us meet that goal.
Can I add to that a little bit, Greg?
Yeah, real quick, then we're going to go to Jasmine.
Yeah, real quick. Yeah, and to add to what Ms. Jones has mentioned, you know, considering, you know, if there is a sense of eliminating SROs, how are those duties going to be distributed amongst staff or the resources in our community? How are board policies going to be different? Because the eliminating SROs is going to require board policy, creation of new board policies. It's going to require ARs. It's going to require a designation of duties from current staff and reaching out to community resources to subsidize what those SROs. So it's bigger than just eliminating. We have to come up with something to replace to keep similar services available.
Okay, Jasmine, and then Kevin, then Samantha.
Sure.
I'm sorry. You guys agreed that we were going to do the Roberts Rules of Order, and we were going to, you know, go by the Brown Act, and that's not actually what we're doing. So we really need to step back for a moment in order to be able to do that. I think Mr. Burbeck Herrera, you have some comments about that. Can you please share with us? And then I think that Mr. Bailey, I know this is very challenging for you because of all of this, but people keep raising their hands, and if they keep raising their hands, we're going to be here all night. So I would suggest that once you get to the last raised hands, because I see Marie has raised her hands again, Joyce, I mean, so we keep raising hands and we're going to be here forever, and that's not efficient. So Mr. Burbeck Herrera, could you please guide us through the last facilitation of this meeting so that we could end it and move forward, please? Because I think we were talking about how we voted to have these little subcommittees, and then Trustee Jones said that she was in favor of these then, and then we started going off into another conversation, and we need to stay focused because the conversation was leading to, well, what does that look like? What are these sub-task force or subcommittees going to be doing? Okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, but I would first ask, you know, does anybody have an objection to that so that I could facilitate the end of the meeting? given that, it's the committee
Well,
that controls. If anybody could just, sorry, go ahead.
This is Joyce. If we have questions and concerns, how will we get those answered before you wrap that up? Because I'm in favor of you doing that, but if we've got these raised hands, how do we get that finished?
I think Desiree's proposal is that I wrap up the meeting by addressing all of the people's hands who are in queue. So anybody who has those concerns, please keep them up. But I need to ask the body if they have any objections to me facilitating the end of the meeting, because it's your body, right? The committee belongs to us. So does anybody have any objections? If so, please put a no. Okay, so without objection, Greg, I hope you don't mind. Okay, so I was not able to keep queue. So I can go down the list. I would stress to the body that given that we've created these subcommittees, somebody should create a motion for filling those subcommittees and then figure out timing on when they're going to report back to the committee at large. So I would hope that of these raised hands, somebody would be able to do that. And then we could, for example, take volunteers, etc. So I just want to lay out suggestions, but I will leave it to the body to make those motions. So I'm going to go down the list. Again, I'm sorry I was not able to track the queue. And actually, I'm going to write it down so that we don't stay here all night. So it's Diane, Jasmine, Samantha, Nosheen, Joyce, Marie, Malcolm, Kevin Goyle, Martha Krieger. And as of right now, those are all the people in line. I would ask people to keep their comments to under 2 minutes, but of course we haven't adopted that kind of time limit. So it's just a request. So if we could go ahead and start with Diane, or did you, okay, you lowered your hand. Jasmine.
Thank you. I'm definitely in agreement of these groups. I think one of the questions that I had from before is to find out if SROs were trained in CPI, crisis prevention intervention, to support kids with disabilities in particular. And also for the mental health piece, to recognize at large that the professional associations of counselors and psychologists, nurses, point that we are down about 2 to 3 times the amount of providers that we should have in those areas. And that, perhaps with needing any kind of manpower at all, if we're able to have an SRO, we might reach out to that person. But is that person the proper person to go to, given the scope that we're down 2 to 3 times the amount that we should have of specialists? So thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Jasmine. And I'm typing out the questions for Priya's benefit. So now I have SC, Samantha Cheng.
Hi, I'd like to make a couple motions. One, a motion.
We can only entertain them one at a time.
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to actually save the chat and allow the chat feature to be available for those of us that might need it to process and as a documentation device, and for it to be added to the minutes after meetings.
I understand that the motion is, and I'll need a second, but to save the chat and to allow the chat to be a communication device and then it be added to the minutes. Does that accurately capture your motion? Those 3 prongs?
Yes.
Joyce Ricard would second. Joyce is going to second that motion.
Joyce Raycar is seconding the motion. So now I will ask, is there a discussion or debate?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Desiree.
Who's going to monitor the chat?
That's
Nobody?
A great question.
Nobody, and it just gets saved at the end of the meeting and becomes part of the minutes.
So we could entertain a motion. So in response to that clarifying question, I could entertain a motion for a volunteer for example, the next meeting to be the chat monitor, if you will. So to assist the facilitator in tracking the chat. But as of right now, the only motion on the floor is that 3-pronged. So sorry, for my own benefit, keeping allowing the chat to be live during meetings, to save it and to add it to the minutes. And we have a proper second. So if people could vote yes or no at this time.
Sorry, how do we vote while keeping our hands in queue?
I have your names down on a list and in order, so you can actually lower your hands, but up to you.
All right, for sure.
All right, so I will give it 5 more seconds. Okay, so the ayes have it with 1 no. All right, and Samantha, did you have another motion to make?
Yes, I wanted to make the motion to fill these subcommittees or to grab volunteers for them. I don't know if that would be in this meeting or after, but I did want to put that on the floor.
If I could clarify your motion, you're moving to fill the subcommittees that were created. We created 4 through volunteers. Just to help build that motion, are you proposing any numbers, or is it going to be uncapped?
I think that would depend on the rules that we decide on, but I think at least 5, and then depending on the level of interest.
And so I will just forestall a potential comment. If we're Brown Act compliant, which it was a bit back and forth at yesterday's board meeting, regardless, we should probably keep them under 11, so 10 as a cap, so that we don't run afoul of the Brown Act. But I don't believe we're supposed to be compliant, but regardless, I think, so 5 to 10, would you accept that as your motion?
Yeah, so I motion to fill our subtask force with volunteers, 5 to 10 volunteers. I'm sorry, it's been a long meeting.
Great.
I'm not sure we need a motion to fill that. I think that was a procedural thing. Why do we need a motion to fill the task force, the subcommittees?
So as for that clarifying question, we had not as a body adopted a way to fill the subtask forces. That wasn't in the body of the motion. So for example, a facilitator could assign, that's not my recommendation, but a facilitator could assign people to these subtask forces. That's one example, a very common one. But now the body is choosing to do so through volunteering at a size of 5 to 10.
Okay.
So, and I believe there was a second, or no, there has been no second.
I can second that.
No, not yet. Okay.
All right, we have a second. So again, I'm going to put the motion to the group. Samantha is moving that we fill the 4 sub-task forces through volunteers of a size between 5 and 10 members. All right, so if you could vote yes or no.
Yeah, I've got a question on that. I don't believe it was in the motion, in the body of the motion, but I hope to get clarification. Will this filling of the subtask forces occur at this meeting right now after this vote, or via email to Greg Bailey after, or neither? And another option that I'm not thinking of right now.
Samantha, could you clarify as the maker of the motion whether the volunteering is supposed to take place now or at the between meetings by emailing Greg?
I suppose for efficiency, we should do it now and not through email, just for transparency and efficiency.
All right, and because that affects substance, I'm going to let people take their votes back. Is it still seconded by Joyce?
Yes, yes.
Okay, now I'm going to ask people to vote yes or no on this motion, which is to fill these subtask forces 5 to 10, and we're going to do this at this meeting. All right, I'm going to give it 5 more seconds. All right, the ayes have it with 2 noes. And I would consider, Samantha, I'm going to cap you off at the 2 motions just because we, want to go home to our families, loved ones, etc. So now we have.
And some of us was at a meeting till after midnight last night, just so you know.
Yeah, it was fun to watch.
It was fun to watch.
And
So Antonio, can we finish this thought before we move forward? Can you look at the subtask force and begin to take names for each one of the subtask force that has a raised hand volunteer? Are you going to, was that your point?
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
makes sense.
To
Instead
stay
of
on
continuing
point.
down the queue.
Mhm. Yes,
Okay,
thank
so to be clear, the 4, I'm having to go up the chat to follow that motion. It was, sorry. Oh, here it is. All right, so there are 4 task forces, sub-task forces, sorry. So there's the campus security, there's mental health, interactions between staff, SROs, and there was a third party. Marie, can you remind me who the third party? You said there were 3 parties.
Community.
Oh, community. Thank you.
Students, community, and staff.
Student, staff, and the SRO. Those are the people who interact with each other.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, but I, like I mentioned earlier, the community is.
I'm sorry. That's do you have a clarifying question?
Yeah, I do have a clarifying question.
Thank you.
The community also plays a role. Many of our schools are.
I'm sorry, that's a statement. Could you make your clarifying question?
My question is, does the community, could the community be considered, being that the majority of our schools are in neighborhoods?
So are you saying that there's interactions between the SRO and the community, or between the students and the community, and that should be part of the recommendations of this task subcommittee?
I think to add to the staff part, yes, there are conversations and interactions between SROs and the community.
Right, because the community will call the police on stuff that kids are doing in the community. That we've had many of community members call the police on students.
And apologies to not turn this into potential debate. I would
Right,
encourage
no.
the sub-task forces to own the scope of their topic and potentially define this question that Mr. Herrera has brought up within that sub-task force, so that we can potentially move on to the next item. Martha, is that a clarifying question? Go ahead.
My clarifying question is, we have campus mental health interactions and data. Under which of these does it fall? Who decides what SROs are hired? And if the SRO does something that is, is out of their scope or is questionable, which of these subcommittees will it fall under to say, what's that process? Are we allowed to remove the SRO? What does that go into? Who governs the SRO? Does that go in interactions or campus or data or what?
Sounds like you're asking for a lot of data, Martha.
Okay, that's a data. Sorry, I'm a data girl. Okay. Sorry, a data woman.
I would say anything that involves contracts would be under interactions.
I'm sorry, I'm just entertaining clarifying questions because again, I want to get us home. So so I've laid out the 4 sub-task forces. So if I could ask people to put their hands down, again, I have the queue and we are going to finish the queue. Put their hands down and take away their reactions so that we could
sorry, I have a clarifying question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I apologize, my mic was not working. Is there anything preventing a task force member from serving on 2 subtask forces, or are they only limited to 1?
And I guess I can speak to that just because of the math, 5 to 10, right? So it seems like in order to even allow for 10 on a sub-task force, given how the motion was made, we would have to allow people to serve on multiple task forces. Yeah, because of the range we chose. Otherwise, there's 20 members. It should have been 5 max. All right, now I would like to take volunteers for the campus security sub-task force. And I'm going to write this down. So, all right. Okay. David Cho. All right, so just to confirm, I have Annie, Priya, David, I'm assuming that's Sal, Marie, and Ty for the campus security sub-task force. All right, now I'd like you to put your hands down, please. Great,
Mr.
thank
Weems,
you.
can you take away your reaction too, please?
Or did you mean to volunteer for the campus security sub-task force, Mr. Weems? I'm going to take that as a no, even though you're telling me yes. All right. And now we are moving to the mental health sub-task force. So if people could raise their hands for the mental health sub-task force. I'm going to give it a few more seconds. All right. If we go over the count, I will remove myself. So first, let me start with Elizabeth Whaley, Samantha Chang, David Cho, Priya Henna Tareja, Martha Krieger, Alina Huang. And again, I'm very sorry if I mispronounce your names. Please send me an email. Glynis, Jasmine, Zartman, Noshin, Eula, Charan Ramesh Kumar. Let me count real quick.
Looks like you have 11.
Yeah, so I'm off. So
You
I
took
will.
yourself off? Okay.
Yeah, I will leave that. So we have now mental health. Looks like I will be emailing that sub-task force. All right, we can move now to the third one, interactions. If I could ask everybody to please move, lower your hands. Annie and Ganesh, if you could lower your hands, please, so that I can make sure that everyone's for this one.
Annie,
Okay,
can you?
I'm going to assume you guys are very eager to serve on this one. All right, but if we could just everyone, if they could lower their hands.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, great.
Ready? We're going to do interactions. Please raise your hands. All right, interactions. We have Sal, Ganesh, Kevin, Malcolm, Annie, and Ty.
And Elizabeth. Elizabeth and Mike.
Oh, okay, yeah, they just added. All right,
Let me just.
Elizabeth Wally and Mike Estasio. I'm going to close it off in one more second. All right, so I have.
Oh, and then Ty.
Yeah, no, I had counted him.
And Kevin.
All right. Yeah, I have him too.
Okay.
So I have Sal, Ganesh, Kevin, Michael Hoare, Annie, Ty, Elizabeth, I believe, Elizabeth Wally, and Mike Estasio. Those are the members of the interactions.
You have Malcolm too?
Yeah,
okay.
Malcolm is after Kevin.
Okay.
And now the data subcommittee.
I
could ask everybody to please lower your hands. If there's no objection, since I'm not serving yet on a subcommittee, I'm going to raise my hand for this, but I will. So wait, I'm going to let everybody jump in at the same time. So please lower your hands.
Mike, can you please lower your hand, Mike?
That's so funny. You guys.
Mike, I know. I wish I was controlling this because I could lower all the hands myself when I'm doing this. Mike, can you please? There we go. Thank you very much. Okay.
All right. So if I could entertain people who want to join the data sub-task force, please raise your hands. All right. Oh boy. Samantha Chang, Ty, Martha Krieger, Joyce Raykar, Abena Oni, Kevin Goyle, Mrs. Applegern.
It's Jenny,
Brent?
sorry.
Jenny, all right. Jenny. David Cho, Malcolm H, Marie Hughes, Nosheen Eula, Glynis Mason, Charan Ramakrishnan.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going
Got
to
way too many. It's about 15.
right, and so without if this is amenable to the committee / task force, if I could ask people that are already on another task force to please volunteer themselves off of this committee or another committee that they volunteered for, to try to get to 10.
May I add that I would much rather prefer participating in data than the interactions task force. If I can knock myself off there, then.
Hey, Antonio, why don't we say, lower your hands, and if you're really married to this one, raise your hands a second time, and then we'll do a second round. That way you can cross people off.
All right, I am gonna need them to identify which ones, but yeah, we can do that.
Let's do this, because let's say, okay, everybody lower your hands, please. Lower your hands, please. Lower your hand.
Right.
Ms. Ricard, can you lower your hand? One.
She's down.
Okay, she is now.
I guess
I didn't see it. I didn't see it. Okay.
Okay.
So if you really have to be on this one.
And I would ask people who are serving on another sub-task force to please allow others to serve. All right, if you could now raise your hands, please. All right, okay, has everybody who's wanted to volunteer done so? So let me go down the list. Benaoni, Kevin Goyal, Jenny Applegreen, Malcolm, Joyce, Nosheen Eula, Ty, Samantha Chang,
Antonio,
Nerf,
and
Martha Krieger. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Could anyone who is serving
11.
on another task force volunteer themselves out and identify themselves? Because otherwise I'll lose it.
This is Ty. I'll take myself off interactions to be on the data.
That's not helpful though, because we still got too many.
It is okay, so Ty's off of that one. All right.
This is Samantha. I'd also prefer to be on data instead of mental wellness. I also have a question.
It still won't be helpful.
If I may, yes,
I understand that.
I'm sorry.
If I may, so I wanted to join mental health. So Samantha, I think that works. If I slot myself into mental health, then mental health stays at 10, and now data can go to 10. So just 1 second. So Samantha, ABH. All right, and I think that completes it. I do have less than 10 on campus security and interactions. If you could, everybody could lower their hands. Just want to give one more bite at the apple because we have a lot of eager volunteers.
It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, sorry, I need to lower my hands. Joyce, are you volunteering for another one of the sub-task forces of interactions?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
No.
If I could ask you to lower your hand.
Lower your hand, please.
All right. Are there any people, if you could raise your hands, who want to join interactions or campus security? Marie Hughes, which one?
Interactions.
And Malcolm, are you or Marie on campus security?
I'm on campus security.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, it's just that I'm using initials. So
Samantha?
Yes, I can also join interactions.
Thank you.
All right. And I will volunteer for campus security. Marie, is your hand still raised?
Okay.
All right. So capping that off, thank you so much for participating in such an efficient manner. So I will now move down the queue so that we can close this meeting out. I have NV. That would be, or is it NU? I think it might have been, yeah, no Sheen.
So yeah, I essentially wanted to propose a motion that Samantha did about the subcommittee. So I'm glad that's been done. But I just want to say then, after from now on communication, is somebody going to be sending out those emails, or are we internally going to have to figure out that communication?
So let me answer your question. So I'm going to work with Mr. Bailey to identify the members of the sub-task forces, and he has, well, I mean, we all do, the emails, and so then we can, you know, make sure we connect you all. And then, you know, good luck scheduling. As I understand, the goal is to create a report for the next task force meeting. So scheduling should be done with that in mind. So does that work for you, Noshi?
Yeah, thank you.
Keep that in mind. It's October the 8th.
Good reminder. So our next meeting is October the 8th in 2 weeks or so.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right. So now we can move to JR. Joyce Raycar.
Really, Antonio, really?
Sorry.
I had a question early on in this process where I was looking for some clarifying information, but now that we have the subcommittees formed, where I can seek out that information, I think I might be good. So the information I wanted was the definition of those actual functions, and so that might be a data issue. Yeah, that's didn't want that question that I had to fall off the radar. So,
and I think this approach of creating sub-task forces prevents us from having to keep Mr. Bailey busy for the next 2 weeks only answering our questions. So I hope he's appreciative of that effort.
He doesn't mind.
All right.
Bored.
So,
he's gonna kill me.
So I have
Very,
two MHs.
very much appreciated.
And because Malcolm has spoken less, Marie, if you don't mind, I'm gonna go to him. Malcolm. Sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry, I wanted to propose two motions, both very, well, one's very quick and the other may or may not be. First, I'd like to propose that we invite appropriate representative or representatives from the Fremont Police Department to give us their take on the SRO program and how it's working. I think we all deserve to hear that. I was actually a little surprised.
I'm sorry, so your motion, I need to cut you off at your motion, then I need to entertain a second, then you can speak to your motion. So if I could capture your motion correctly, it's you are asking that the SRO representative be invited to the next task force meeting. Is that correct? Would that accurately?
Correct.
Okay.
I second that.
All right. So
I would amend that. Second, but amend.
All right. So just 1 second. Yes, that is in order. So the motion is to invite an SRO representative to the next task force meeting, and then so that motion is on the floor. Mr. Tai is looking to amend. Can you propose your amendment?
I would seek to amend it in either having a time limit, just because of efficiency, how long this meeting has already gone, or having a video presentation first and then coming for a Q&A.
I'm sorry, for a motion, you'll have to pick one and
Sorry.
propose
So
to the body.
to amend it, I would amend having a presentation in video form that can be shared with the group that we can see before the meeting, and then inviting that officer to come for a Q&A.
And would that item be capped at time or not?
Not capped at time.
Okay. So do I hear a second? And the amendment, as I understand it, and I'll ask you to confirm it, it's for some kind of video communication from the SRO representative and then a Q&A session to field any questions from that presentation.
I would second that, Antonio.
Great. So Mr. Herrera has seconded. So now we are going to be voting on the amendment first.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Campbell.
Okay, so given that we anticipate having report outs from each of the 4 subcommittees, and there was a question about timing, Ty, is your amendment to put a time limit on the Q&A session? Because as we can see, the Q&A session, just as the beginning of this, has gone on for, well over an hour. So
as amended, there was no time limit, but if it seems long during that meeting, maybe the members can say we should cap it then, or as amended, it wasn't.
Or is another clarifying question, or is the committee open to extending the time by a half an hour to make the meeting 2 hours?
So I will
I can't make a motion because I'm
right. I will pose back that members who are in the queue can make that motion, voting members. So that would be MH, KG, or MK. All right, but as right now, we are voting on the amendment that the original motion was that the SRO representative come to the next task force to present. And as amended, it would be that they would provide us with the video information and then be available for a Q&A based on that video message. All right, so we are voting on the amendment.
I'd like to speak on this. I believe Robert's rules allows me to speak after the question.
And okay, so that'll be debate, but first I'll take the question.
It's a procedural question. I was wondering if we are allowed to debate or discuss this motion before voting.
You are.
Robert's rules is wonderful for that. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Can I speak now?
As long as there's a second. As long
Okay.
as there's a second.
Yes. Is there a second to the motion?
Mr. Sal made the second to the motion.
And
that's right.
I made the second to the amendment that Ty had mentioned about a presentation and a Q&A.
Yes.
Right. So that motion, the amendment, is properly on the floor. We can now entertain debate. So I took your clarifying question, Jenny, but then Annie had lined up for debate. Are you for or against? I'm going to try to take them in queue.
Are you asking me or Annie?
Annie.
Okay. I guess also point of information then. Are we right now debating on the amendment or the original motion as amended?
The amendment. We have not adopted the amendment.
Okay. Then I would not like to debate on the amendment. My misunderstanding.
Jenny?
I'm sorry. I think I'm in the same boat as Annie. If we're just voting on the amendment only and not the original motion, I don't wish to debate that.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no debate. Now let's move. Yes, go ahead.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes, of course.
So we have different subcommittees, and I understand Malcolm's.
Sorry, it needs to be a question.
Yes. So the question is, wouldn't the subcommittees be reaching out to the police as needed to get whatever information they need, just like anybody else? So how does that separate from the presence of the SROs here? Or does that limit?
I'm going to push back as chair. That seems, I interpret that to be debate instead of a clarifying question. And so, but you're free to do debate. But hearing none, I will put it now to the body. All in favor of taking the amendment to receive a video message and have the SRO representative be available for Q&A at the next task force meeting, please vote yes or no. And I'll keep the vote open for the next 10 seconds. All right. I need to write this down.
I can't see mine, Antonio, but I'm voting yes.
Okay.
Just for the record, I can't find my.
So if people could not change their votes, because I am not good at telling on the fly. All right. Okay, the way I count it is the noes have it with 11 votes to the 6 yeses. Hearing no disagreement with that count, we are now at the main motion. Back to Mr. Herrera's motion that so the amendment was defeated. And so we're just speaking on the main motion, which is we would like to invite the SRO representative to speak at the next meeting. If everybody could remove their votes.
And lower your hands.
And I am taking debate. And
a question.
Annie.
Yeah.
But you know what,
Go ahead.
Mr. Weems never changed. Did you take his yes? It's been sitting there for a while. Mr. Weems, are you there?
I counted it, but regardless, it wouldn't have affected the outcome of the vote. But yes, I did count it.
I believe that yes was from what we voted like 15 minutes ago.
Okay, can you remove your reaction, please?
He's very agreeable today. I don't fault him for it. Okay, so we are now voting on the main motion that Mr. Herrera brought up, but I am seeing potential debate. So I will take them in for or against, and then once we exhaust one side, then we close the debate. So I will first, actually, Mr. Herrera, do you want to speak to your motion briefly?
Sure. I think it sounds like the subcommittees are going to meet prior to our October 8th meeting. Is that correct? Okay. So with that, we're going to come to that October 8th meeting with some information. And with the information comes questions. So I think if, not to waste anybody's time, we have Officer Rodriguez show up to the October 8th meeting. Each of the sub-task force will obviously be presenting some sort of information. And at that time, there may be clarifying questions from that presentation. So I think the fact that we're going to meet separately and then we're all going to come together on October 8th, I think it'd be important for him just to be to that meeting to answer any clarifying questions, provide examples, or be specific about what programs look like.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to remind the task force that the board has already determined that the SRO not be present during deliberation. So that's board direction, but this would be a Q&A, so they're welcome to be there. So again, I am, without objection, I'm limiting comments to 2 minutes max. So go ahead, Ms. Karuga. Annie.
Yes, I am speaking against this motion for 2 reasons. So the primary reason is we are going to be considering not only SROs, but implicit in that is the alternatives, right? We've talked multiple times now that if we get rid of SROs, then there are going to have to be other staff such as counselors, mental health personnel to provide those functions. And if we only get the police side, we will not be getting the side of the mental health professionals or the counselors. And so that will be a biased analysis where we do not get the other side. And I think that it is very important that we don't just hear one side and one perspective. So I will be voting no in that interest, and I hope that others will join me in voting no.
Is there a reason why we couldn't?
So yeah, so let me entertain that question. So for example, someone could make a motion to amend this motion that's on the table to also invite experts from other fields. But nevertheless, now going down the queue, I now need to hear someone on the opposing, that we just heard opposing, so someone for the motion. Ganesh, are you for the motion?
No.
Otherwise, under Robert's rules, the debate is exhausted. And so we can now move to voting on the motion on the table. So it is to invite the SRO representative to present, or to be available for, excuse me, to be available for questions. Is that right, Mr. Herrera? Sorry, you're on mute.
Am I able to respond to that or not?
No, this isn't debate. I just want to make sure that I put the motion clearly to the body. What was the original?
The original motion was to have, because there was several questions in regards to specific programming, specific tasks or duties that the SROs have that were presented by Mr. Bailey. There were several questions, so I thought it'd be a good idea for him to be here to answer.
Sorry, that would be arguing in support of your motion. The motion is that the SRO representative be at the next meeting.
That's
field questions, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. All right, so now if people could vote in favor or against.
And we had a second for that, Mr. Burbank?
Yeah, we had a second a long time ago.
A long time ago, okay.
Yeah, that's how we were able to do amendment and debate.
Okay,
And
okay.
All right, so all in
okay.
favor of inviting the SRO representative to field questions at the next task force meeting, please vote aye or nay. I will give it 6 more seconds.
Please vote.
All right, 6 long seconds.
Everybody should vote because this is who are our voting members should vote. No one should be left blank.
If I may, so you do have the ability to abstain.
Abstain, yeah, true that. Mr.
All right,
Burbank
so
Herrera,
I'm
you
gonna-
did not vote.
I don't want to prejudice. So typically chairs don't vote.
Okay.
Unless they can affect the outcome of the vote.
Okay.
And that's different for small bodies, but anyways. All right, so let me go, if people could not change their votes, I would appreciate it. So I count 9 no's, 7 yeses. So the no's have it. And so we will not be inviting the SRO to the next meeting.
Can I just clarify? I counted 14 no's and 8 yeses. Just
Okay, I'm sorry. I am not scrolling. My bad.
Yeah.
All right, so let me. And you counted how many?
I counted 14 no's and 8 yes. So the outcome is the same, but just wanted to clarify.
So that's a problem because I thought we only have 20 voting members. So if we could, if people could make sure that their vote is recorded right now, then I'm going to go ahead and count. Thank you, Jenny. So I do count 8 yeses. Okay, I'm clearly miscounting. I'm sorry. Just 1 second. I'm counting 15. Regardless, apologies. The scrolling is difficult for me. Regardless, the no's have it. But I would remind people to only vote if you're a voting member. But then I need to revisit what number of voting members we have for purposes of quorum. Thought it was originally 20. Okay, so the no's have it.
It's 21. It's 21, Antonio.
Okay, thanks. So that should be 8 and 13, not 8 and 14, I thought. Regardless, the no's have it, and I will look into this issue. All right, now we move to the next person. Oh, Malcolm, was that, you had 2 motions?
Yes, I also as a parent representative, most of the parents I speak to are pretty
I'm sorry,
angry.
could you make your motion, and then we can, if it's seconded, you can speak on it, etc.
Parents and the community want to participate in this process. They do interact with SROs, and therefore I move that either this committee or the subcommittee, the data subcommittee, do the research to gain some public input. If they don't like the input that we have, they refer to as a surfboard E or
I'm sorry, so I'm gonna try to capture your motion so we can avoid debate until it's seconded. So you want either the task force or the sub-task force to find a way to gain public input.
Correct.
Would that accurately capture your motion?
Correct. Broad
Okay.
public input.
Broad public input. All right, do I have a second?
I second that.
All right, we have a second. Motion's on the table. Could everybody remove their votes, please? Thank you. Seeing, okay, Annie? Oh, sorry,
Yes.
just one second. Sorry. The maker of the motion, could you speak to your motion? Go ahead, Malcolm.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of frustration among all the parents that I speak to at the lack of consultation with the school district on our response to COVID-19. And I hope we're not going to make everyone really unhappy by doing the same thing with the SRO decision.
All right, thank you. And so now I will take a no. Annie, are you against?
Yes, I wish to speak against this motion.
Go ahead. I'm going to type
All
the
right.
motion in the chat.
Great, yes. Again, I wish to speak against this motion for two reasons. The first of which being we have parent representatives. This was the whole point of having parent representatives on the task force, was to get a parent perspective. And we do have parents. We also have a system for public comment. We talked about this system at length at the beginning of this meeting. So because we already have parent reps, and because we already have a system for public comment, I believe that this will be unnecessary and will not be the best use of our limited time.
Thank you. And so the motion is in the chat. And do I now have a speaker for? Sal, are you speaking for? Sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah, I got it. I'm speaking in support of Malcolm's recommendation. Like I mentioned before, as an educational system, you know, we always want to involve all stakeholders, and the parent group is one of the main stakeholders in this process. So we're looking at parents, we're looking at students, we're looking at, you know, the community, we're looking at staff, and I echo what Malcolm is mentioning. The parents are a key piece. You know, when they send their kids to school daily, they want to make sure they're safe, and school staff want to ensure that they're safe. So I do think if we're collecting data, what the parents have to say is just as important as what, you know, everybody else has to say in terms of if we're going to put out surveys or whatnot. I think the parent group has to be included in that data information.
And I don't want to bias this discussion, but I will, because not everybody's familiar with Robert's rules. There are motions, for example, to close debate. So if you wish to do that, you rise, I believe, you accelerate beyond like the debaters. But for now, I will now take a motion, someone speaking against the motion that's in the chat. Miss Applegreen, are you speaking against? Sorry, you're on mute.
I am speaking against, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to echo what Annie said, that the parents have been surveyed multiple times. The parents have access to public comment on the website, and we have parent representatives here. So to then, as the motion states, find ways for the task force and sub-task force to solicit broad public input. We're already doing that. It would be a waste of this committee's time to then look for another way to elicit parent input when we've already done it.
Thank you. I will now take someone for. Kevin, are you for? If not, I'll come back to you until I find a for. So Sal, you've already spoken to the motion. So I need to entertain.
Am I not able to? Am I not able to add to that?
No. So we take new speakers to debate, and then we exhaust it if we don't have the next side. So like we take for, against, and once we run out of, then there is no further debate.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. Any speakers for? Okay, so then that closes debate. So then we will move to vote, and the motion on the floor is that we find ways for the task force and sub-task force to solicit broad public input. All right, I'll please vote yes or no's, and then please have patience with me. I'm gonna give it 10 seconds. All right. So without doing a count, it seems like the no's have it with 2 yeses. All right, and we are now moving to Marie Hughes. And I just want to inform the body that typically under Roberts, we did commit to hearing all of these speakers. But typically, you know, once we hit the agenda time, that would force us to consider whatever was on the table and essentially adjourn everything else unless the body wanted to extend. But we're doing things a little differently. So we're going to hear these speakers and adjourn after that.
Yeah,
so
that was
now,
my point of order.
No,
I was just getting ready to ask you that because we didn't make a motion to extend the time, and we've gone over at least 30 plus minutes over the time. So and it wasn't approved. So
so that's why I heard the objection. Like I heard any objections about whether it was fine for me to take over facilitation, and that was at Desiree's request, and it was that we hear everybody. So as a committee, we've already decided on that, but I'm just letting you know that under Robert's rules, it would be handled, under pure Robert's rules, it would be handled differently. So and Marie.
So I was going to make a motion, but I wanted to mention that in the chat, Sale has volunteered to be on any committees that don't have 10 people. So the motion I would like to make is that Antonio become the parliamentary facilitator whenever we need that sort of thing. And Greg can be the facilitator when it's about presenting information and talking to the board.
If I understand your motion correctly, it's that your current speaker is being asked to chair the meeting procedurally, but that Greg facilitate the meeting when presenting information.
Yes.
Okay.
I second that.
All right, I have a second. Could people put their votes away first? So if I could ask everybody to remove their votes. Now, we can move to amendment or debate. Give it 3 more seconds, 5 more seconds.
I would like to amend. I think we should clarify a substitute for Antonio or Greg Bailey. And if this amendment doesn't work, I don't know if this is part of it, but I think this rule is a bit arbitrary and we can continue with the same functions without this extra piece of words.
Sorry, it sounds like you're debating. Are you making an amendment to the motion? if so, I'd like to help you craft it, but.
Yes, okay, I'll make an amendment to the motion.
Okay, what is your amendment?
My amendment is that a substitute for Antonio and Mr. Bailey be decided upon.
Okay, so instead of me or Mr. Bailey, that we appoint potentially someone else to facilitate presentations and the meeting, right? Those two pieces that were in the original motion. Is that how I'm understanding your motion?
I'm reconsidering this amendment simply because I think I do not want to support more discussion on the issue. So I think I'll just end I don't want to support the amendment anymore.
Okay, you're withdrawing your amendment. Do I have debate or amendment? Hearing none and seeing none, I would ask the body to please vote yes or no in favor of the motion. And let me quickly type it out. All right, that's how I understand the motion. Greg Bailey facilitates presentation of information, and Antonio facilitates the running of the meeting procedurally. So now if I could ask people for their votes, please vote yes or no. I'm going to give it 10 seconds. Just an extra comment. I very much appreciate the vote of support. The ayes have it. Thank you for that. Now moving to KG, Kevin.
Yes, sir. I think this happened like way earlier in the meeting, but just something for collecting data as not as a motion, but just want to clarify, would presenting data about police brutality or prison to pipeline outside of schools be allowed in the discussion? Because I know Mr. Weems discussed, for example, having SROs to reduce the stigma of police officers, but questioning how we deal with that stigma as to what that stigma is may also help clarify that function of SROs.
So could you rephrase that question? I know it's not a motion, and so maybe I should just defer to Mr. Bailey. But if you could ask that question again, Kevin.
Okay. I think I just want to clarify if, as part of the data subgroup, we can gather data about police brutality and prison to pipeline outside of schools as evidence as to why reducing stigma or using SROs to address stigma might be problematic.
So I believe I can answer that question. So as I mentioned, the sub-task forces are encouraged to define the scope as assuming it's germane to the topic that they're handling, germane meaning relevant. So given that it's the data sub-task force and it still falls within the scope of the SRO task force, I believe it would be appropriate, but ultimately would defer maybe to Greg.
Understood.
Yeah, and I would just like to throw some caution at that. I think what we're dealing with is the Fremont SROs and how they are treating or not treating our Fremont students in our Fremont community. I just think, and I know I'm not voting, but I'm not comfortable presenting data from somewhere across the country that doesn't really pertain to us. That would be my only caution with that. And if the task force decides to go against that, I want to be very clear. What data are we going to collect? Is it from the county? Is it from the state? Is it from the city? I think we need to be very clear on what data we are looking at because we are addressing the Fremont SROs. I think I could clearly admit that we have an issue with police brutality across our country, absolutely. But is it happening within Fremont? I think that's what we need to decide.
Sure, sir.
Sorry, and if I may just remind the task force and the sub-task force. The task force has a certain scope as designated by the board. And then we created sub-task forces to review certain topics. So, and ultimately the committee belongs to its voting members. So I would put that question, given the input that you've received from myself and Mr. Bailey, to the sub-task force to determine whether it's appropriate to review that information. But ultimately the decision is yours. You're empowered to make those determinations. Does that answer your question, Kevin?
Slightly. I think I just wanted to clarify something a little bit more. As for example, I think Mr. Bailey was adamant on specifying county level, city level data. But on the other hand, evidence on a national scale, metadata on that level might also suggest that Fremont needs to set a precedent on the issue so that it doesn't happen in the future. I'm not sure what the threshold for evaluation is there.
And Kevin, I would encourage you to take those comments to the extent that you're on the data sub-task force and discuss them within the sub-task force.
Understood.
May I make a quick comment? I know I don't want to influence the conversation either, but I would.
Do you mean you have a clarifying question, Desiree?
Do I have a clarifying question? Okay, can I frame this in a question? Okay, Mr. Burbeck Herrera, may I please have a clarifying question? I would ask that we consider what would be the reasons or what would be the how would we justify national data that is demographically does not represent Fremont, given the realities of what we have seen in terms of police brutality as it relates to African Americans, Latinx students? How would we take that national data and synthesize it in a way that is relevant to the demographic population that we're dealing with Fremont Unified School District? Just to be completely.
And so with due respect to Mr. Balamatron, because I did mention I will not take debate in the form of a clarifying question, I'm going to assume that was a curious question. And so I would refer that question to the data sub-task force and allow it to fit within that discussion that you have more widely. And now we have Martha Krieger. And after that, we adjourn the meeting. The quote of 2020 is, Martha, you're on mute. Not the Martha part.
Sorry about that. I know you're always telling me that. Okay. Two things. One, I would love to make a motion to not restrict the sub-task force outside of those sub-task force meetings. It feels like, that's just my motion. Can we make a motion to allow the sub-task force to discuss that within their own task force meeting?
You can make a motion, Martha.
Sorry, I will, if I may, I need to take cue. So your motion, let me understand your motion, but I also need to understand what it's getting at. No restrictions. Can you give me an example of a restriction that you're trying to eliminate?
Well, we didn't have discussions here of those task forces, of the sub-task forces, because we don't have the time or the scope to have those conversations. So if we're taking out bits and pieces and trying to control that conversation outside of that subcommittee, why do we create subcommittees?
No, so to be clear, I've as created by, or as designed by the original motion, and maybe with some interpretation, and actually I would put it back to the body. Oh, actually, you know what? You have a motion. It's to not create restrictions upon the sub-task forces and to let them explore their scope. Now, is it, just to be clear, does it have to be germane to their heading? Personally, I would recommend that, given that that's what the task force approved.
Yeah, actually, can I amend that motion slightly and say that the task force needs to say what their focus was and why they made that decision when they come back to the board and say, this is what we decided was our focus and this is what we stuck to in the order of time?
I'm going to actually entertain objections to that. Otherwise, I will take it by consent, because up to this point, what I've said is it is as the scope of the task force is up to them to the sub task force is up to them to determine, as long as it's germane to the heading. So like data, campus security, etc. So are there objections to Martha's comment? And let me that the task force be allowed to determine its scope as long as it's germane or relevant to the topic of the sub task force. Are there any objections? Please vote no. I'll give it 5 seconds. There are objections.
No,
So
well, I'm sorry. Are you asking us to vote no, we have no objections, or vote?
Fair. So please do not. So this is something done often to try to expedite matters. You'll try to take a vote on something without objections, and so I guess if so, the motion, if you will, is, and this is what anyways, the motion is that the sub task forces be allowed to determine their own scope without restrictions, as long as it's germane or relevant to the topic of the sub task force. So at this point, I'm trying to take a vote by unanimous consensus. So if you have an objection to it, though, please vote no. Otherwise, do not vote.
Clarifying question.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
When we reference relevance, are we talking county, city, or are we talking nationally? That's to me. When we say relevance, is it the topic or is it the proximity of the issue that's being discussed?
As I had stated it, it was to the topic. So data should be looking at data with respect to the SRO task force. And for example, interaction should be looking at staff / SRO / student interactions. So those are examples. So as long as it's relevant to that heading, but I do see objections. So I'm going to now take it for a vote. So the motion is, if I'm accurately understanding your motion, Martha, which I'd already stated. So let me type it out real quick. Sub task forces. Just 1 second. Okay, is this an appropriate capture of your motion, Martha? Subtask forces are allowed to determine their own scope as long as it's germane to their topic. For example, data or campus security, with the implicit understanding that it has to fall within the SRO program general topic. Is that an accurate?
Yeah, I just didn't want to debate the limits of these task forces right now. Yes.
Sorry, I just want to capture the motion and then I want to hear a second. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, great. I have a second. So this is now room for debate or amendment. Malcolm, do you have a debate or amendment?
Yeah, I oppose the motion. I think we're already struggling with the vast scope of the task at hand. And I see it expanding. Data is such a generic term, so is germane. We've had references to looking at police brutality that is not associated with Fremont or this region, or schools or students. I think if we don't have some focus early on, we're going to get badly lost.
Thank you, Malcolm. And apologies, as I mentioned, I'm supposed to hear the maker of the motion speak in favor of their motion if they wish to, and I failed to do that. Martha, do you want to speak to your motion, and I'll put the 2-minute timer?
Yeah, I would like to speak to my motion for a minute. I really enjoy data. It's something important to me. I feel like decisions should not be made out of bias or emotion, that we should really look at underlying data. And I know that we can't get all that data by October 8th, but what we can get and what we can decide is what kind of data that we need. And if we limit that conversation away from those 10 people, then we're taking that ability to make that choice out of their hands. And there has to be conversation that goes into that. It's not something that we can anticipate right at this moment. And I think that saying, you know, it could be that there is relevant information, you know, in similar schools to ours around a particular topic. It could be that there's discussions of when we're looking at gender, for example, or something culturally competent about a smaller group. We need to look sometimes, because we don't have enough people, we don't have 5,000 members of that here, to maybe look in other spaces to see if there is any validated, relevant, verified data elsewhere. And so I worry when we try to put restrictions on that conversation outside of a task force we've already created, just without even looking at what we have. We don't even know what we're trying to find data right now until we have that conversation. And that's what I'm asking for, is to allow that to happen. And then when it comes back, you can say, hey, I don't want to put that into this moment. Someone's going to pass a motion and say, you know what, I appreciate you gathered this data, but we don't want to use this when I move that we don't take that into consideration when we make this decision. I'm just assuming someone's going to say that, and you'll have an opportunity to do that later, I think, probably. So anyway, I'm going to stop talking. It's been 2 minutes. I appreciate you guys thinking about it, though.
All right, thank you very much. Now, so that was, so I did go against for, so I'm going to hear against.
Against
Sal, are you against?
Yeah, I'm in support of what Malcolm is mentioning. Yes. So I think I want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. I think when we talk about service and then we talk about similar schools, as a principal, when we analyze our data, we're looking at similar schools based off of demographics, based off of a lot of different variables when we're comparing, you know, academic competency, you know, how we rate against other schools. But when we're looking at service, we can't compare the city of Fremont to the city of Hayward or the city of Oakland or the city of Antioch. It's two separate pieces. So I want to be cautious when we talk about, you know, looking at extending data with similar schools rather than service, okay? Because I think what we're looking at is the service valuable enough to keep or not keep? And the key phrase is in Fremont, California, okay? So when we look at service and similar schools, those are two separate things. So I just want to note that.
And I will interpret Malcolm's question in the chat to be a clarifying question. What was the intent of the school board regarding scope? I'm trying to find the motion in board docs so I can give you a definite answer. But while the next speaker is speaking, I can look for that. So so I just heard against Martha's motion. So now I'm hearing for Martha's motion. Kevin.
Yes, sir.
Are you in favor? Are you in support of Martha's motion? If so, you can speak.
Yes, I'm in support of Martha's motion. I would say to Mr. Fearless Leader, sir, that there is a very clear connection between the service of police officers outside of schools, between the officers that serve within schools, because it is the same institution. And I think evidence that looks at police institutions across the nation and evaluates policies, perhaps links that data to policies that do exist within the Fremont institutions, that we can see that it's a potential problem, it's a potential risk. Now, if we can see that it is a national global problem and that there is enough evidence to surmount any potential that Fremont could be the exception to what could be a very strong norm, I think we should follow through Martha's notion, not only in that it already co-opts what you're saying, in that it has to be germane and relevant to the scope of the discussion, but also in that I think it provides adequate ground for deliberation on national scale outside of school politics and acknowledging the importance of evaluating the institution of policing itself in school resource officers evaluation.
All right, thank you. That was a speaker for Martha's motion. So now I'm hearing a speaker against. One that hasn't spoken. Annie, are you speaking against?
No, I am intending to speak for.
Okay. Otherwise, Malcolm and Sal have spoken. Marie, are you speaking against?
No.
Okay. Otherwise, all members are either speaking for or have already spoken. So we should put this to a vote. The debate has been exhausted. And so the motion before us to vote on is subtask forces are allowed to determine their own scope as long as it's germane to their topic. And I will answer Mr. Malcolm's question about the scope of the committee. And let me just real quick. It was to reevaluate the SRO program relationship we have with the city of Fremont, and then direct staff to renegotiate the contract to allow FUSD to not pay while under distance learning. So the scope is to reevaluate the SRO program. So if, sorry, SRO. So I mentioned it implicitly, but I want to have things in writing. Martha, are you fine with the motion that's before you in the chat?
I'm sorry, yes, I got off mute. Subtask forces are allowed to determine their own scope as long as it's germane to their topic, e.g. ergo, data, or campus security, wider scope of reevaluating SRO program. Within, you mean within the wider scope of reevaluating SRO program?
Right, I had mentioned that was implicit, but I think it should be explicit.
I actually like that you wrote that in so that the public will know what the conversation was.
Right, okay.
And what is the second part? Oh, you didn't write that.
There is a clarifying question. Sal, do you want to, so Sal's question is, does the committee know that SROs work under the direction of the site administrator? So, is that a clarifying question?
Yeah, I'm just.
What's that got to do with the data piece?
Yeah, I'm just asking if folks understand, because the SRO's actions are determined by the site administrator.
Can they be hired? Can they be hired?
Sorry, I'm gonna stop debate because it's not specific to this item.
Yeah, it's not,
but I would certainly.
Of the scope of the, yeah, I'm sorry.
And we would be happy to address that at either the next task force meeting, or I would encourage the relevant subtask forces to discuss that point. Otherwise, we can now move to vote. So I would ask everybody to lower their hands and remove their votes. And so the motion before you is subtask forces are allowed to determine their own scope as long as it's germane / relevant to their topic, example given data or campus security, within the wider scope of reevaluating the SRO program. So all in favor, please vote yes. All against, please vote no. I will give it the 10 seconds that I normally give. All right, with 4 no's, the ayes have it. And so the motion passes. All right, so that concludes this meeting. We are now able to adjourn. And for that last clarifying question, as I mentioned, I will be conferring with Mr. Bailey to put the members of the sub task forces in contact with one another. Good luck with your work, and please bring back reports to share. Thank you so much and have a good night.